Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and presented by Rockpoint Bank and EPB. Rockpoint Bank, from Chattanooga for Chattanooga. And EPB, get EPB's fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Dr. Lori Mann-Bruce, the 19th Chancellor of the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Dr. Bruce, before we learn about all the civil works projects you, your siblings, and cousins completed on your family farm in Flintville, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
I'm an orange juice drinker.
Not a coffee or tea? Or
I will drink hot tea and I'll drink coffee, but typically my go-to is juice.
Wait, what is your morning routine? I imagine you're probably, as accomplished as you are, you're probably an early riser, huh?
I am a pretty early riser. I don't require a lot of sleep. But I have two little dogs, and they are usually pawing at me, waking me up, making sure I take them on their morning walk.
I think I met one or two of them during Rotary Fellowship Week, and we were out at the Mox football practice.
Yeah.
I can't remember if you had them both out there.
I had them both. Yeah. I think I had them both out there. Lucy and Brody. They're both little Humane Society rescue pups.
Those are the best.
And they live their best life every day.
Yeah, I bet they do. How old are they?
I don't know, because I got them from the Humane Society. Lucy, I think she was 1 or 2 years old when I got her, and I've had her for almost 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And Brody was probably 2 or 3 when I got him, and I've had him about 4 years.
Oh, so they're family, definitely
family.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of family, you grew up Flintville, Tennessee. Now, I know where Flintville is. It's close to Huntsville, right? Not too far?
Yes. So if you're, most people know Highway 64. Highway 64 runs east to west across the state. And Flintville is a community just off of Highway 64 in Lincoln County, but out closer to the county edge. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of near Lincoln County and Franklin County and the Alabama border. So pretty far out in the county. Has
that area been affected by Nashville's explosive growth?
Not as much as it's been affected by Huntsville's explosive growth.
That's interesting. That makes a heck of a lot more sense because it's closer, isn't it?
Yeah, and so it's a bit of a bedroom community for Huntsville, for Tullahoma, for the Arnold Engineering Development Center, and for kind of southern Nashville. So even though Fayetteville, which is the county seat, is a pretty small town, and it has some light industry, but many people use it as a bedroom community and then work in Huntsville, Tullahoma, or Nashville.
So there's a lot of smart people there. I mean, if you're putting Huntsville and Tullahoma, there's a lot of PhDs in that area.
A lot of engineers, but mixed with farmers, right? Yeah. So it's a good mix of people across the spectrum in terms of what their careers are.
So speaking of farmers, you grew up on a cattle farm, a cattle ranch, and farm and orchards, and So talk about that a little bit.
So my mom and dad, when they were first married, they got 1 acre of land, built a very small brick ranch house, very small. And my dad always said, as I was growing up, he said, "I'm not greedy. I just want the land attached to my land." And so over time...
That can keep going, can't it?
Yes, it can. So over time, they would save their money, buy more land, and now they have hundreds of acres of land. But it's a working farm, mostly cattle. But growing up, I had sheep, goats, chickens, but mostly cattle.
Did your parents grow up on a farm, or did your dad just decide he wanted the rural life?
Oh, no, they both grew up very, very rural. Yeah. And they both grew up quite poor, and did not go to college out of high school. Felt very fortunate to have jobs out of high school. Worked in factories, but because they both grew up on farms, and especially my dad, he always had this drive to just keep being a farmer. He wanted to make a living as a farmer, but his day job was always in a factory or an office, and nights and weekends we worked the farm.
What kind of factory?
A dressmaking factory, Serban, which was in Fayetteville. That was his first job. And my mom worked at Jonathan Logan, which is a dressmaking factory in Fayetteville.
So they're both working full-time jobs and also not only working a farm, but trying to expand a farm.
Right. Yeah. And so, I really attribute my work ethic to them.
Oh, I bet.
My dad used to say, you can even be productive when you're resting. And if you sat down, they would put something in your hands to do. If it was shelling peas, it was something.
Something had to be done.
And the number one rule in our house was you could never say you're bored. If you ever said you were bored, they would fix that for you real quick.
I got something for you. You wouldn't be so bored on that. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have an older brother, older sister. I'm the baby of the family. And for a while, during my tween years, I had cousins that my parents took in. And so there were a lot of kids in the house. And we were very unsupervised, I will say. We lived out in the country, and it had woodland, ponds, streams, fields, and we just kind of roamed free and had fun and built forts and dammed streams and built biking trails. And we were very, very, looking back, we were incredibly industrious. Mm-hmm. We would take on projects and really work all summer building bike trails. And I mean, we really...
You did stuff.
We did stuff.
So you had that idyllic life where basically you got up in the morning and your mom and dad really didn't see you till dinner time.
They didn't. My mom would sometimes even pack us a lunch and say, do not come back until dinner. And so we would go off in the woods and we would play and get into a lot of mischief too. Because anytime you have a lot of cousins and a little bit of a gang, a little bit of a group in the woods having fun. But we fished, we hiked, we mountain biked. We would get big ideas that we're going to build tunnels and underground, and we would work and work and work with shovels and building things. Don't know where that really came from, but we were very adventurous and industrious.
What do you think you took from that? Looking back now as a kid, what did you take? Because particularly today, kids, it's obviously a lot more electronic and not hands-on. So where do you think that benefited you?
Oh, it definitely benefited me looking back in a variety of ways. There was always, say, 5 or 6 of us together as kids, and we were pretty close in age. And we were making up games and making up adventures and having adventures in the woods. And you would have spats and conflict, but you would get over it very quickly. And I think being in an environment where the kids were kind of self-organizing and self-managing taught me to be a really good teammate and to not let personal feelings or situations get in the way of the end goal. If we were trying to get something done, we had to work together. And it also taught me, I think, a very entrepreneurial spirit because there was no one to turn to do things for us. And when I say an entrepreneurial spirit, I mean having a big idea and just going after it and rolling up your sleeves and building the resources, developing a plan and getting it done. And I really think I took that from that childhood.
Yeah.
And then the ability to take risk, be bold.
Yeah.
To not be afraid to put yourself out there. What's the worst that can happen? Okay, you fail at that, then pick something else to do. So I think that childhood really set in me an inner drive to think big, go after things, work with a team, and be bold.
Yeah, and because you all were together, you had to kind of figure it out together. And I'm sure that was, something like conflict resolution. You got 5 or 6 of you out, probably a mile or 2 from home or something like that, and someone gets upset, and it's like, am I going to go crying home, or are we going to figure this out?
Exactly.
We're going to want to play to the next thing.
Exactly. No one wanted to go be the one that went and told, right? No one wanted to be the tattletale either. And so you had to resolve it. You had to resolve the conflict within the team. And I think, look back, and I'm so grateful for that childhood and that upbringing that instilled in me deeply those attributes.
Yeah. So in addition to, playing with your siblings and your cousins and doing that, all day, I'm sure you had chores.
Oh, absolutely. We would always have a checklist of chores.
Yeah.
And even in the winter, when you got home from school, you had a checklist. And so you just immediately had to get through that checklist and do your chores before you could go and have any fun.
Yeah.
Even as a teenager, I was a runner and a bicyclist. I was always into bicycling and running. And, even though those were the things I was doing to train for something, I had to do my chores first.
Mm-hmm.
So you roll up your sleeves, you get your work done, so then you can play hard. You work hard so you can play hard.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about your parents didn't go to college right out of high school. Talk a little bit about their education, because I found it interesting. Your mom going back to college and your dad's, lack of better description, on-the-job training for computer science.
Yeah. So, they both went to factories and were working in factories. And my dad told me his first job was making cardboard boxes. So he had those big copper staples, big stapler, and he would staple the bottom. These were big boxes that were, used in a manufacturing facility. And so his whole job was to staple these boxes. Well, he would get bored. And so he would drift off and, maybe make his initials in the staples. He would do things and he would get in trouble. And eventually they said, okay, we're going to give an aptitude test to a bunch of people in the factory. He scored very high. So they pulled him off of that line and said, okay, we're going to computerize the factory. So we're going to send you to IBM to learn computers. And so they did. They sent him to classes. He had never flown on a plane. He had to fly on a plane to go and do some of this training. Some of it was at Georgia Tech. Some of it was at IBM. And his job was to come back and computerize the factory.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so without having ever really done anything practical with computers, I mean, this is like, early 70s. He did that. He and a coworker really took all these classes and they computerized the factory. And so he never got a computer science degree. I don't even really think there were computer science degrees at that time. But he had kind of on-the-job training. They sent him to different classes in school to learn computer programming. And then he worked as a computer scientist the rest of his career. He worked for years at that factory. Then he went to work at Computer Science Corporation, and he finished his career at AEDC in Tullahoma, working in the wind tunnels and stuff at the Air Force research base.
That's a great story, because you never know where life takes you.
That's right.
An opportunity comes your way, and look where it took him. And now your mom went back to school, right?
Yeah, and so my mom, she and her sister both decided they were going to quit their jobs. They were going to go to college. And my mom was helping my older brother, kind of navigate student loans, applying to colleges, understanding a community college versus a university. They didn't understand how all that worked. So she was kind of helping my brother learn about all of that. And she has said, look, if he can do it, I can do it. And so she, probably much to his chagrin, she started college about the same time he did.
Same school?
Yeah. So she went to Motlow Community College, and then went to MTSU, and then went to Tennessee State and did a graduate degree. So
wow.
She studied computer science and math because she had seen what my dad had studied, and minored in history. And she was just a natural learner. Growing up, they always had a set of encyclopedias.
Mm-hmm.
Every single dinner, we always had dinner at 5 o'clock. Dinner had to be you sat down at 5 p.m. to eat every day. And because afterward, my dad was going to go in the field and work.
Yeah.
So dinner was always at 5 sharp. And every dinner that I recall as a child, they would get out the encyclopedia and we would read about something. We would learn about something over dinner. So always just a very natural learner, curious about the world. And so no surprise, she was an excellent student because she's passionate about learning.
Was the topic something they picked, or would you go around and say,
it'd be all kinds of things. I mean,
open to the first page?
Yeah, sometimes you just open it up. Sometimes a question would come up like, I remember distinctly one time she was an avid reader. She still is, and she was reading some novel, and they were eating lox and bagels. And we were like, what is a lock? What's a bagel? I mean, this is like in the 1970s. Well, let's get the encyclopedia. Like the encyclopedia was the answer for everything for us. And we would open it up and read about locks. Oh, it's some kind of smoked fish. Oh, okay. Read about bagels. Oh, that's a Jewish boiled bread. And next thing you know, she'd be trying to make bagels at home for us to have lox and bagels. But every night we were opening the encyclopedia and reading in it. And so just an avid learner. And so when she studied, it's like she double majored, she minored, she just couldn't stop. She couldn't stop learning.
She got thirsty.
Yeah.
Encyclopedias were really the original internet.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, they were. And so I remember all those little thin, like clear pages where it would talk about the cardiovascular system and everything.
Where they would lay over each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm showing my age here. We were always a little bit behind on the encyclopedias in my house because I was one of 7. So we would always have the encyclopedia say in 1973 that said, "One day man will go to the moon." and we made it.
Well, my mom, even though money was short growing up, my mom and dad always had money for books, encyclopedias, books, and us doing fun things as a family, camping, boating. Those were the things they put in growing the farm.
Yeah.
So, money was short a lot of the time, but they always prioritized learning and adventure.
Yeah, and it sounds like education was big in your household. So as you're growing up, you're playing with your siblings and cousins, and you get into high school. Does your focus change?
Well, I went to a very, very small country school for my elementary school and my junior high. This is back in the days when we had elementary, junior high, and then high school was 3 grades, 10th through 12th. And I went to a very small country school, and looking back, I was a little of a fish out of water. I was always different from my classmates. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I got picked on a little bit. I got bullied a lot and picked on.
When you say different, more academic than you?
I was more academic, and I was just different. Yeah. I was just different. I dressed differently. I thought differently. And
so you were
sometimes when you're in a very small country school, different is not good.
Yeah. Independent doesn't always work.
No.
Yeah.
And when I look back at pictures of our little annuals, our little yearbooks, you can look at it and tell I look different. The way I'm dressed, the way everything about me is just a little bit different. And when I got to high school, my world just opened up. Mm-hmm. It was a very big consolidated high school. And
was it the county high school?
It was a county, but it was one high school for the entire county. So it was a very large high school. Mm-hmm. And there you had clubs and teams, and, I was always a runner, a cyclist, a swimmer. So suddenly those things were valued, where the things that I was good at were suddenly valued where they might not have been really valued before. And so in high school, I was super active. I was very active in 4-H. I was very active. I was a majorette. I was a runner, a bicyclist. I did triathlons.
Oh, geez.
But I was incredibly active in high school and just loved my high school years.
Yeah. I know what 4-H is like this, but explain 4-H for folks who aren't totally familiar with 4-H.
Yeah, so 4-H is a publicly run kind of club organization. And if you typically, when you're in about 4th grade, there's 4-H clubs, and the 4-H's stand for Head, Heart, Hands, and Health. And a lot of the activities when you're in a 4-H club is around public speaking. It's around civic engagement and leadership. And you pick a project. Now, oftentimes people think the project's got to be agricultural.
Yeah.
And I did. I did a lot of agricultural things in 4-H. I showed sheep, and I raised sheep, and I raised chickens. But my project was always bicycle. They encouraged you to pick one project area and then focus all of your club activities around that topic. So if it was a speech contest, I was giving a speech about, a famous bicyclist. Mm-hmm. Or if I was doing a demonstration, I was doing a demonstration about something around bicycling. So my years in 4-H, it gave me an opportunity, being very rural, to actually interact with kids more from the city. And we did pet shows, and we did something called bicycle rodeos, where you would train other kids on safety, and we'd have police officers come and help us do a bike rodeo. But all of those activities in 4-H, looking back, was a huge part of my professional development.
Yeah.
I was very shy, very introverted, and being put out front to give speeches, to give hands-on demonstrations, to lead groups of other kids and activities really developed my civic engagement. It developed my leadership skills, and definitely developed my ability to not be as shy and introverted, and to be able to step out and kind of speak publicly and do public speaking was a big part of 4-H.
And that's probably the hard thing for any high school kid to understand, that what you're doing right now, it's going to benefit you so much in the years to come. You talked about bicycling. What's your favorite type of bicycling? Is it getting on the road, long distance running?
It depends on different phases of my life. For years, my husband and I rode a tandem bicycle, a two-person bicycle. And, we'd ride 100, 150 miles a week. I mean, we were avid bicyclists.
Because those aren't easy.
No, they're not. And riding a tandem, we would say, is like learning to dance. There's got to be a leader and a follower, but you've got to be well coordinated for the dance to work. And so the person in the front is the leader. Right? The person in the front of that tandem bicycle is controlling the gearing, the braking, the steering, and they're having to call cues to the person in the back to either push harder on the pedal, let off, but the person in the front's called the captain, and the person in the back is called the stoker, because you're stoking the fire.
I like that.
And I was always the stoker. My husband was the captain. Being the captain requires a lot of upper body strength, and so he was always the captain. I was the stoker. But for years, we rode bicycles. We came to Chattanooga and rode in tandem group rides. Sometimes when we were driving around Chattanooga, we're like, we've bicycled down this road. Or we'll see a parking lot like, we gathered there to start our bicycle ride. But we rode tandem, all over the South. And for years, that was hardcore road riding. We were those people that you see out there in spandex and lycra. That was us. We were out there bicycling. But I loved a mountain bike, road bike, just cruise, get a little cruiser and cruise around. I've always been an avid cyclist. I don't have as much time for it as I used to.
Not bad.
But I love everything about bicycling.
I would imagine one of your favorite movies has got to be Breaking Away.
Yeah.
So you're very active in high school. You're in a bunch of clubs and things like that. Do you have time for a part-time job?
I lifeguarded. I was always a swimmer, and I was a certified lifeguard. So I worked as a lifeguard in summers, and I worked at church camps, and I lifeguarded lakes, which was very stressful.
Oh, I bet.
Lifeguarding a lake. But I worked as a lifeguard. Now, my first real, what I consider a real job, was working on a Christmas tree farm, which sounds so idyllic and pastoral.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because I was going to ask you.
So my first day on the job on this Christmas tree farm, and it was Lyon Family Farms, Lyon, Lyon Family Farms, and my first day on the job, I thought, it'll just be so romantic out with the Christmas trees. Well, the first thing you had to do was use a sling blade, and you had to sling blade under the trees to get all the weeds out. So now you're encountering yellow jacket nests, all kinds of things, snakes in the weeds, because the weeds would be waist high.
Yeah.
So you're sling blading all the weeds. Then you took these clippers, manual, very manual clippers, and you had to shape the tree. Now, this is in the summer when the sap is up.
Oh.
So you would end up with sap in your hair, sap on your clothes. But that's what a Christmas tree farm is. So when you go to a store or a Christmas tree lot and you buy a tree and it's this perfectly shaped tree, it's because for 7 or 8 years, someone has shaped that tree every summer and made it have this perfect shape. And so that's what the job was. I've never been more motivated to study hard in college than after having that Christmas tree farm job.
So it wasn't a Hallmark movie, was it?
It wasn't. In my mind, I thought it was going to be,
yeah.
But you literally had to be covered with gloves, even a ski mask. Like no part of your body could be showing, otherwise you'd get sap all over it. And so you're in the heat, out there with sling blades and clippers.
You're doing this in the summer. You're not selling it. This is not the idyllic parents coming up with 2 small kids and going, "Oh, this is a fine tree, Jimmy."
It was a summer job, and it was a hard summer job.
Yeah. So you did that and working through high school. Take us through the rest of your education and where you decided to go to school and where you went from there.
Yeah. So I always thought I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Why was that?
I don't know. This was back during the time when like all the King Tut, Tutankhamun stuff was out there. And I just thought, wouldn't it be fantastic to be an archaeologist? And I used to go into the ditches of the roads and dig and find arrowheads and fossils and digging in the dirt in the ditches, literally in the ditches. And so I thought in my mind, I had this very idyllic view that I was going to be this archaeologist out in the field finding relics. And about the time I was a senior in high school, I got an opportunity to job shadow some engineers at AEDC in Tullahoma. And I went into the wind tunnels and I saw all the stuff they were doing and I fell in love with it. And I said, I'm going to be an engineer. And I think that's an example of what I often tell people. I think young people gravitate toward what they've been exposed to.
Yeah.
And once I got exposed to engineering, I knew that that's for me. I love that. And I think it's important that we give lots of opportunities to young people, to high schoolers, to expose them to all kinds of career opportunities, because then they make informed choices about what they want to study and what they want to do. I really am a strong believer in that.
What's the best way to give them exposure?
I think summer camps, job shadowing, even once you're in college, I'm a big believer in internships, co-op programs, because I think sometimes you get exposed to something and you're like, that isn't as idyllic as I thought. Yeah. That Christmas tree farm isn't as idyllic as I thought. Sometimes you're exposed to things and you're like, I never knew that a career could be like that. I never knew somebody could pay me to do something this fun and this exciting. And so at the university level, I really promote internships, co-op opportunities, because I think getting out in the workplace and just learning about what people do, then you'll gravitate toward what you like. But I got lucky and I got exposed to engineering, and so I decided, I'm studying engineering. And I started looking for what I thought was a really good engineering school. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I thought UAH, that's the engineering school for me.
Alabama Huntsville.
Yeah, University of Alabama Huntsville. And when I toured a couple of places, that I settled on them very quickly. They gave me a fantastic scholarship, and I had a lot of other scholarships. I had a 4-H scholarship, a Schwinn scholarship from the Schwinn bicycle company. I had a Rotary scholarship. I had this patchwork of money. I kind of patchworked together to pay my way through college. But UAH was extremely generous to me and gave me a great scholarship. So I went there and studied engineering and specialized in electrical engineering and loved it. I loved everything about that discipline. I worked for the U.S. Army for a while, the U.S. Army Strategic Defense Command.
In Huntsville?
In Huntsville.
And that's as a civilian?
Yes, as a civilian. And some people might remember Ronald Reagan's Star Wars initiative. Well, the Strategic Missile Defense Command was part of that. And so I got to work there and rotate around into different divisions, at one point working in the Patriot Missile Office. So when Desert Storm happened and I got to see Patriot missiles being used to defend and protect our troops, it was very encouraging to see that things that we had worked on were actually being used and they were working. They were successful. But to be honest, I worked for the Army. I worked in this missile defense industry, and it's a industry around designing and building defense systems in case we're ever attacked by missiles. Well, in my mind, I'm glad somebody does that because we need that.
Mm-hmm.
But in my mind, I couldn't reconcile or get really motivated about the idea of spending my career working on something, hoping it never gets used.
That's a good point.
Because if it gets used, that means someone attacked us with missiles.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't motivating for me at all to work on something that I hope never got used. So I pivoted and I quit my job and I went to graduate school and
where'd you go?
Went to Georgia Tech and really went into a program that was very focused on biomedical because I thought, well, I want to get away from working on something I hope doesn't get used to working on something I hope does get used and has more obvious, immediate benefit to humans. The missile defense system does, but it's not an immediate gratification. Right. It's not like you can immediately see how it's going to impact and help people. And so I really pivoted toward biomedical. They did not have a biomedical program per se. They had a joint program between Georgia Tech and Emory Medical School where I took my medical classes at Emory and my engineering classes at Georgia Tech. So my degrees were still Georgia Tech engineering degrees, but they were really focused on biomedical.
So you had to take enough of the medical, similar things to what doctors have to take.
Yeah, I did cadaver labs, anatomy, pathology. I remember a final exam where it was just a bunch of human hearts, and I had to, put my hand up in there and say, okay, well, this tricuspid valve is deformed this way. That was the final exam in one of my courses. So I was kind of taking these medical and engineering classes, really focusing on medical imaging. I wanted to do medical imaging,
like MRIs.
And ultrasound. Mammograms, x-rays, and MRIs. And my goal was to develop software algorithms for helping the radiologist read the medical images more effectively. So we called it machine learning at the time. Now people call it AI. But it really was at the very beginning of the machine learning algorithms. But the goal was the whole application was on medical images. And so I worked on ultrasonic imaging. One of my projects in my master's program was on something called a fluic that I designed, a forward-looking ultrasonic intravascular catheter. And so it was a ultrasonic imaging system that you could kind of snake up into a vessel, a vein, and image radially the walls of the vein and then image forward because it was forward-looking. And that was all ultrasound.
Can I ask you a stupid question?
No.
How do you think of that? I mean, I'm sitting. I don't consider myself a dumb guy, but I'm like, man, my brain just doesn't work that way.
I was very fortunate to just get on research teams and work on things that, that were exciting, and I approached things with a very open mind and a very creative thought about. I really do approach things not from a position of no, but from a position of yes. So whatever the situation is, yes, we can solve that. Yes, we can do it if. And then we focus on the if and making sure that all those things are in place. A lot of people focus things from a position of no. Well, we can't do that. We can't do this. I focus on I approach almost everything from a position of yes. How do we get to a yes? How do we solve the problem? And being uninhibited and untethered about the how. Let's just focus on getting there and be really open to a variety of ways of the how.
So you think, in your mind, every problem can be solved?
I totally do.
Yeah.
I totally do. I believe every problem can be solved.
Yeah. So Georgia Tech, you're doing both engineering and medical for the biomedical degree. Where do you go after that?
Well, I was dating my now husband, and we liked what we were studying, but we really didn't enjoy living in Atlanta. Yeah. It was a tough time. It was the pre-96 Olympics. Crime was very high right around campus. And so we took an opportunity and moved to France and studied in France through a program that Georgia Tech had with some universities in France. So we got married. So my husband likes to say he finished his master's. A week later, we married, and a week later, we were on a plane going to France. Neither one of us having ever been out of the country.
Wow.
We had to go get a passport to get a visa to move there. And this is pre-internet, pre-smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little book, and we had two little books. One was a French phrase book, and one was kind of a map culture book. And I mean, I think back and think, gosh, we really stepped off into the unknown.
Where in France?
Metz, France, METZ. It's in the far eastern border.
Okay.
So when you look at France as a map, there's a little bump out on the far eastern side. And so we were kind of in that little bump out.
That's over towards Germany?
Yes. We could get on a train and go 30 minutes north and be in Luxembourg, 30 minutes east, be in Germany, and 30 minutes south and be in Switzerland. Now, we were poor graduate students, so we didn't have much money to travel around.
Yeah.
But we had opportunity to really see and do things while we were studying there that were just, mind-blowing to us. We had never traveled or been anywhere like that.
Well, you grew up in Flintville.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden
Atlanta was the big was the big move. First it was a big move to Huntsville. Then it was the big move to Atlanta, and then it was to France. And so
how long were you there?
A year or so. I don't remember exactly how long. Yeah. But we were there for a while. And we truly lived there. We had to open bank accounts. We had to go to the doctor there. We were truly living there and studying there. And so then we came back, and my husband said, I really want to work in industry before I finish my PhD. We had both started PhD programs. So he took a job in Huntsville, and I transferred back to UAH, finished my PhD at UAH. Even though I'd done all my coursework, all my stuff, that was, in hindsight, that wasn't a smart decision on my part. It wasn't an informed decision because I ended up having to take more courses and more stuff to graduate from UAH. But I didn't know you could finish your dissertation remotely. So I was just uninformed. So we moved to Huntsville so he could take a job, I could finish my PhD, and during that time, we started a software company. So we started with my best friend from college, a software company called Diacoustics Incorporated. Probably the worst named company on earth. We didn't know what we were doing. But we started a software company and developed software products that we sold on the market. Do you remember Egghead software?
Yeah.
Our products were sold in Egghead stores.
Really?
And so we eventually then decided, okay, we need to decide what we're going to do when we grow up.
Well, let me ask you a question back on that. Number one, what kind of software?
It was software. It was very much related to music and audio. And our first product was a product called MIDI Renderer. And I don't know that people would even remember this, but we used to have something called MIDI files, MIDI. And these were files that you could use software to create kind of musical scores, and it would produce music, but it sounded very computerized. It sounded very artificial. And so the first product that we produced was a software that converted a MIDI file to a WAV file. And a WAV file was an actual recording of music and audio. And so we used software to really, truly create audio files that sounded like actual recordings based on MIDI files. And we sold that product, and it was a good seller. Other software developers used it because they could use software to generate a MIDI file, then convert it to a WAV file, and it sounded very professional compared to a MIDI file. But then our goal was to create this software that we could start stripping off little bits of the software and sell for sound card developers, computer developers, that they would embed as drivers on their hardware that made their sound cards and their computers sound better. So we had a vision.
You had a plan.
We created a product, and then we started pulling off parts of the product to sell as bundled in with hardware, and that's really where the real market was. That's where the real money to be made.
Was it just the three of you?
It was four of us. So it was my best friend and her husband, and me and my husband.
And you guys did everything from creating it to marketing it to selling it.
Everything. Okay, so we had a telephony system in our office. We had an office that was probably about 6 by 8 feet for all four of us, and because we were only in there in the evenings, we were working during the day. all had jobs. I was a PhD student finishing my PhD. They all had full-time jobs. And we had a telephony system in this office. So if anybody called, and they would call a number, and it would say, "Welcome to Diacoustics Incorporated. For sales, press 1. For engineering, press 2. For distribution, press 3." It all went to me. Like everyone. So you could tell when the number lit up who, like, "Hi, this is sales, Diacoustic Sales. What can I do for you?" But we were running a business just, in the late hours and
what a time to do it, though.
Oh, fun. That was the most fun. We would go to big computer shows, and people had no idea we were just a company of 4.
So how do you end up on the academic side? I mean, because it sounds like you got a burgeoning software company.
Yeah.
You got all these other experiences.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, I just remember my husband and I looking at each other, and we were like, okay, we gotta decide what we're really gonna do.
Yeah.
We're going in every direction. Let's pick something. And we said, okay, I'm gonna step out and try to get an academic position. I'm gonna try to be a professor. And if I get a professor position wherever I go, he'll go there and finish his PhD. And then we'll both try to be professors. And that's what we did. Mm-hmm. So I went to UNLV in Nevada. I went to University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
I was going to ask you, was that a culture shock? But after all the other things I've heard, Las Vegas has nothing.
Yeah. I had never spent the night in Las Vegas until I went there to start my job.
Yeah.
I flew in the night before, stayed in a hotel, and started work the next day.
Oh, wow.
But we both went to UNLV because we decided at that time in our lives, I'm still only 27 at this point. And
That's a full life already.
I know. And I decided at this point in my life, if I was ever going to live out west, that's the time to do it. We haven't had kids yet. We're not saddled with a house. Let's just do it. And so we went to kind of the West Coast and spent 4 or 5 years there, me being a faculty member, him finishing his PhD, and had a lot of fun camping and bicycling in the desert Southwest and just exploring the Southwest, knowing we want to move back south.
Yeah.
He grew up in Alabama. I grew up in Tennessee. We knew we wanted to eventually move back.
Well, and what a better place than Stark Vegas.
Yeah, yeah. So when he finished his PhD, we had to look for a place that was kind of big enough for the both of us. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up taking positions at Mississippi State because the electrical engineering department there was pretty big. It was probably like 35 faculty. It was a really big department. And so it was big enough that we could each kind of carve out our own careers without being seen as a unit.
Yeah.
And without stepping on each other's toes. So we stayed there almost 20 years. We were there for a long time. Loved Mississippi State.
Yeah. It's a good little town.
Great little college town, but a great university, a great college of engineering. And so loved it. Loved everything about it. Remodeled a very old bungalow house. Lived in a historic district. Just loved our time there. Yeah. Very productive. That's one of the hardest working universities I've ever worked at. The people work hard every day. I say hunger drives work ethic, and they're hungry. It's
an underrated school. I mean, it really is.
It's a land grant R1 SEC. It is a top notch university, but it's still very humble in its attitude. And I think that kind of makes it a little underrated sometimes.
Well, they got Ole Miss over there screaming and yelling. I'm not an Ole Miss fan.
I'm not either. I'm more about the engineers and the ags and the cowbell ringing because the mission of Mississippi State, I believed in the mission. The mission was about accessibility, affordability, but world-class education and research.
Which is exactly what we need.
Yes.
Yeah. And after Mississippi State, you're there 20 years, you get to Tennessee Tech?
I go to Tennessee Tech to be provost. That was a big life change. After we're there 18, 19 years at Mississippi State, so we leave, we go to Cookeville, to Tennessee Tech, and a much smaller campus, much smaller university, still very engineering focused, which was a good fit for us, but really took that took that opportunity more for family reasons. We thought the school systems were much better there for our son. We're closer to both of our parents who are now getting older. So really, and me coming back to my home state, I always wanted to come back to Tennessee and never took the opportunity to come back. I had opportunities, but they weren't the right ones. And so this then felt like the right one for us to be able to come to Tennessee.
And just explain real briefly what a provost does.
A provost is kind of the chief, kind of the executive vice president. So Tennessee Tech has a president where UTC has a chancellor, basically the campus leader. And the provost is right below that leader. And where oftentimes the president or the chancellor is very external facing, the provost is very internal facing.
Kind of like a chief operating officer?
Kind of like a chief operating officer. They're actually called the chief academic officer. But oftentimes they are the second in command. So if the president or chancellor steps away, the provost steps in. And all of the academic programs, the colleges, the faculty, all of that rolls up to the provost. And sometimes the provost is also the executive vice president, where some of the other vice presidents also report to the provost. So it's kind of like that internal COO for the university that's sometimes the president gets to play good cop, the provost is bad cop. So you're really kind of managing the internal operations. You're running the institution internally and trying to make the chancellor or the president's vision a reality.
Which is great training for what you're doing now.
Yes.
How long were you at Tennessee Tech?
A little over 7 years in that role.
So you're there about 7 years. What attracted you to the role here in Chattanooga?
Well, I was happy. I was happy at Mississippi State, and I got kind of recruited to Tennessee Tech. And I was happy at Tennessee Tech. I was not out looking. I was not on the job market. And I would get almost probably an email a day, from some university wanting me to apply for something. And I'd just delete them. I wouldn't even open them. I don't mean to sound rude, but I didn't have time. I just wouldn't even open them. But an email came from UTC, and it just sat there, and I wouldn't delete it. And it just sat there.
That told you something,
I
didn't it?
know. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And so finally, I responded to it. And I went to my president. I was very close with him, and I said, he had been encouraging me to look at president and chancellor positions. And I said, well, I get contacted all the time, and I always just delete them. I don't even open them. I don't respond. But I have one that's been sitting in my inbox for a while, and I'm responding to it just to explore the idea. And he said, who is it? And I said, UTC. And he just said, oh, good. I mean, he immediately said, because, he came from UTC. Yeah. He was the provost at UTC.
Oh, was that John?
Phil Oldham.
Okay.
So Phil Oldham was provost at UTC for about 5 years and then went to be president at Tennessee Tech. Then I left Mississippi State to be his provost. And so he loves UTC. And he just said, oh, crud. And I said, no, I'm just going to explore it. And he's like, nope, they're going to love you and you're going to love them. He said, I might as well start looking for another provost. And he wasn't wrong.
So what was that process like? UTC reaches out, you apply for, and you got to go through that applying, and it gets narrowed down to a couple candidates. The thing I always found interesting about public universities is they're bringing in 3 or 4 people, and it's very public, and that's got to be a little uncomfortable when you've got another job.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable, especially when you're you're kind of the top internal person at another university. You're the provost. I have to be careful.
Yeah.
I had to be very careful to not go all the way to that public stage unless I was dead serious that I wanted the job. So I did a lot of homework, and every bit of homework I did, every KPI, every metric that I looked at for UTC was excellent and kind of underrated for what it was. And so every metric I looked at, I'm like, oh, this place looks better and better and better. And it's a university on the rise.
Yeah.
That's a great place to come into to be a leader. And so every metric was an upward pointing metric. And kind of I felt like at a little bit of a inflection point. Had been a little bit stagnant in a few areas, maybe ready for an inflection point. Nothing bad. Everything was good, but there was opportunity there. I felt like it could grow more.
Yeah.
If someone came in and was really ambitious, could really drive it forward. And so after all my homework, I decided, okay, I'll agree to be a finalist and a public candidate. And, universities put candidates through a grind.
I bet.
It was a 2 or 3 day interview, and it was partly in Knoxville, partly in Chattanooga. It included public presentations, public forum, open yourself up to questions publicly. And I got some hard-hitting questions in the public forum, nothing that shocked me.
Yeah.
But universities don't play around when they're interviewing kind of executive level, deans and higher. They put you through the grinder and in a very public way. And
to your point, it's not just an hour, or an afternoon where you're being grilled by 3 or 4 people. You're there for 3 or 4 days, and it's coming from all directions.
Yes.
And I would imagine the prep work you have to put into something like that, not just to do well in the interview, but to really put your vision out there.
Right. And it's hard to put a vision out when you've not been at the place yet.
Right.
So, but you just do a lot of homework and do the best you can. But, at the end of the second or third day, I was in a room. There were some people coming in to meet with me, and they knew, they've put me through it. And they said, "Do you want anything to drink?" I said, "I just want some kind of soft drink." And somebody came in and put a Sundrop in front of me, and I just went, "Oh, these are my people. These are my people." I mean, I grew up drinking Sundrop, and I knew then, I was like, that's a sign.
That's sealed the deal.
That's a sign. I need to be here.
Now, did they, was that just a happenstance, or do you think they did a little research and said,
I don't know. I think it was happenstance. I think whoever just
that's
picked
a sign.
So whoever picked the soft drink, that's a very southern Tennessee, middle Tennessee
absolutely,
drink. And when they put that Sundrop in front of me, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a fit. So what was your reaction when they came to you and said, "You know what, we want you to be the chancellor"?
I don't want to sound conceited, but I wasn't surprised because it felt right. Sometimes you go to a place and it just doesn't feel right. It felt right. And I could tell from other people's response to my answers to questions that it felt right for them too.
Yeah.
So I was just excited. I was excited about the opportunity and excited to move to a place where I could set a vision. I could help a group move toward a vision. As a provost, I used to say the number one rule about being number 2 is knowing you're not number 1.
Yeah.
And my job was to make that president's vision a reality. And so I was very happy and excited to be coming to a place where all the key ingredients are there, and I get to work with the team to set a vision and work with the team to make a vision a reality, but more from the perspective of the leader than the implementer.
You've been here about 6 months now, and I've always looked at when someone goes into a leadership position, their first job is that walking around and learning, and first do no harm. And,
yes.
It's kind of unfair to say, all right, what's your vision? Because you haven't really been there long enough to do that. But what's your vision?
Well, and that's true. I have been very careful in these first few months to do no harm. And I warned my team, I said, I am an idea a minute person. I generate an idea a minute. I have more ideas and more ambitions than y'all will be able to handle. You're going to have to help me pare down and focus, because I am a ambitious idea generator. And I said, but the key is here on the front end is for me to listen, and park my ideas over in a parking place, put them in a little parking lot, and then see after a few months which of those ideas really make sense now that I understand the context better. Because I've looked at all the data. I could do that remotely when I was doing my homework. But the context of that data, you can only know once you're in a place for a while. And so knowing the culture and understanding the context of what that data is telling me. But kind of park my ideas in a parking lot for a little while. And then after I've been here, 4 or 5 months, let them kind of start migrating back and we start creating initiatives and pushing things forward. But even before I got here, I looked at the enrollment over decades, and I looked at it, and you could see enrollment would grow, and then it would plateau, and then it would grow, and then it would plateau. And after about 3 iterations of that, you see a pattern, and we'd been in a plateau for a while. So the university is ready for growth. And that's natural. Any business, you expand, you settle. You kind of settle it down. You expand, you settle it down. And so, the business expansion for a university is enrollment. And so that enrollment has grown and plateaued, and it's been in a plateau phase. So I knew coming in, we're going to set an ambitious enrollment goal, and I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there. The way we get there, the how, so I'm going to start with a yes. Yes, we can get to 15,000 in 5 years, which is a 25% growth. The how, we can work on the how, but we can do it. I know we can do it. Now, I've done homework behind the scenes to make sure that's a feasible goal. It's a stretch goal, but it's doable. But then rallying the troops and getting everybody on campus bought into the idea of getting to 15,000 and then starting to put out, initiatives and things that we can do to get us there.
Yeah, I think you make an interesting point about the being ready for growth. And I look back to, I moved here 25 years ago, and really the university and the city were separate. You had the university in the city, but they didn't coordinate well together, and you didn't have a lot of connection to the campus. And I think when Bob Corker was mayor, a lot of that came together through a lot of his initiatives. What I found interesting a few weeks ago or months ago now, when he spoke about Chattanooga Ventures and how we need to get busy again, it's almost a parallel message to the university.
Yeah. I mean, in our university, nothing's broken. It's great. It's doing great. Everything is like I said, every metric is in a positive direction. It's harnessing that momentum and pushing forward and not being satisfied with the status quo, really putting ourselves out there and just pushing ourselves farther. And just philosophically, my upbringing, my personal background, I am a huge believer in accessibility and affordability of a public education. We are a state-funded public university. We're not an elite private. We are a public-funded public university. And our number one mission, the core to everything we do, is providing educational opportunity to the Tennessee citizen. And I wouldn't come to a place like, I wouldn't go to a university where that's not the mission. That's why I chose UTC. I'm not trying to make UTC something it isn't. I came here because that is UTC. I'm a huge believer in that mission. And so that 15,000, a lot around driving to that 15,000 is around that. It's about looking for ways to ensure affordability, accessibility, and student success.
And where are we right now? About 11, 12,000?
We're at just over 12,000.
So that's very doable.
Yes, I think it's doable. And doing it in a way that opens the door wider to education. And the thing about UTC is that almost 30% of our students are first-gen students. Almost 40% of our students are Pell-eligible students. A significant portion of our students are from lower financial status as a family. And so our focus has to be on ensuring those students are successful.
Yeah.
And I am a believer, it doesn't matter where you start, it matters where you end. And so not every student coming to UTC is coming with an equal academic preparation or financial resources. So it's really incumbent upon us to make sure that the university is creating pathways of success for students. And to me, that's my vision. That's my mission, is driving that 15,000, but in a way that opens the door wide and really, really resources students for success. Once we admit a student and enroll them, it's an incumbent on us to help them be successful. And then, just going back to my old Mississippi State days, that mission of Mississippi State, I see a lot of parallels with UTC. UTC's mission should be affordability, accessibility, but world-class education and research. And those two come together, there's nothing you can't do.
I've got one more question for you, but I do want to say that laying out that vision and seeing where you want it to go not only parallels nice with the city, but I think as Chattanoogans is a great message.
Well, and I'm very practical. I'm a very practical person and very pragmatic. And I know that most students, particularly the demographic of students that come to UTC, they're getting a college education because they're wanting to better themselves and their families. They're wanting to get on some kind of career path that is going to make them upwardly mobile. So it's really important that we have degree programs that align with the workforce needs.
Yeah.
So that when we graduate people, they're career ready. They're not just job ready, they're career ready. And they're ready to step right into leadership roles and whatever their career pathway is right from the beginning. And of course, we're always going to have students who go to grad school and go to professional school, but we have a large percentage of our students who want a bachelor's degree to put themselves on a career path. And we need to be very cognizant of that as a university and ensuring we're giving them those pathways.
And a lot of those students come from other places within the state or in the region and stay here.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be important to our future.
Only about 30% of our students come from the Chattanooga region.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that small.
Yeah. When you look at it by counties.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you look at like Hamilton County and this area, it's about 30% of our student body.
Wow.
So a lot of students coming from Nashville, a lot from Memphis, a lot from North Georgia, and then probably about 20% just come from rural Tennessee. And so we're a talent attractor. Like we draw talent in. That's what I think the university's goal is.
It's a great way to look at it.
We draw talent in, and I think the city's job is to keep them here.
Yep. That's a great way to put it. Before I get to my last question, I do want to remind our listeners who makes My Morning Cup possible. And it's a huge thank you to our presenting sponsors, EPB and Rockpoint Bank. Get EPB fiber optics for the world's fastest community-wide internet. And Rockpoint Bank, your local banking partner. Your business, your bank, your future. All right, Dr. Bruce, what would you tell that 25-year-old self? And this is a bit unfair because you had already lived a full life by 25 if you're running a business at 27. But what would you tell that 25-year-old self is important for a happy life?
To not sweat the small stuff.
Great point. I
And
love
to
that.
live in the moment. I mean, I hate to say that because my 25-year-old self got me to where I am now.
Yeah.
But as I've matured, I don't worry about the past as much. I don't relive the past in my mind. I let things go, and I don't worry about the future. I plan, but I don't worry. And then I act in the moment to make the future what I want it to be.
I love that because I've spent my life worried about the future. And it's going to come whether you worry about it or not. So why worry today with what hadn't even happened?
And reliving the past doesn't change the past.
No, you are where you are.
You got to plan, but you got to live in the moment to make the future what you want it to be.
Well, I think that's great advice, and I think the future of UTC is in very good hands, and we're glad you are where you are today.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I really am.
Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.